All right. Hello. Welcome, everyone. Our next panel today is all about creating engaging NPCs and monsters. So, first of all, I want to thank our production team. Thank you so much for organizing everything, helping us with all the tech stuff. Steve, Don't Stop Me Now, Cosmic, thank you so much for your help. And we're going to start out with some introductions. So my name is XP Lovecat, and I am on the internet doing role-playing game things, doing reviews on YouTube, and also some editing for fiction books and RPG scenarios. And let's go over to Newman.
Oh, hello. I am TA Newman. I am the host of the Miskatonic Playhouse. I am also lucky enough to be the chair for the Council of Shoggoths for this fantastic convention that we're in now, which is amazing. And everybody who is a volunteer, so it's an amazing experience for everyone to be involved in doing this. As in like a, hey, I'm a player, but like a player, I play games. I just thought I'd make that clear. That sounded weird. Somebody else probably. Yeah,
Okay, let's go to John.
Hashtag player TA Newman.
My name is John Crowdis. I have 3 published titles on the Miskatonic repository. I've been a freelance writer for on and off for 30 odd years, doing stuff for Iron Crown, Fantasy Flight Games, various other things. Been a long time gamer, and I've also had the privilege in the titles that I've had published on the Miskatonic repository. Leslie's been my editor, which I highly recommend. And I just recently moved from Nanaimo, British Columbia to Vancouver, to Victoria, which is on Vancouver Island.
All right, Hedge, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I'm John Hedge. I'm the other one from the Miskatonic Playhouse. I'm normally standing behind Newman, and I've got like these strings attached to him, and I just make him dance. I'm the backstage manager. I do a lot of the organization back there. I'm also a Call of Cthulhu writer, and I recently wrote my own role-playing game called Embers of Humanity, where you try and survive in a post-apocalyptic wasteland. I like running games.
Amazing. And Scott.
Yeah, hi, I'm Scott Dorwood. I am a writer and podcaster. I've written a bunch of stuff for Call of Cthulhu and other horror role-playing games. Podcasting-wise, I'm the co-host of the Good Friends of Jackson Elias, along with Matt Sanderson, and I'm a regular cast member on a number of actual play podcasts, including Ain't Slayed Nobody, How We Roll, and Grizzly Peaks Radio.
Wonderful. Thank you all for being here today. So let's start off with a general question. We're talking about engaging NPCs and monsters. If you could pick maybe one thing to talk about that you think makes an NPC or monster truly memorable, like something that when you play the game, you're thinking about it long after the game is done, what would that one thing be? And we'll go in the same order this time. So starting with Newman.
Ooh. Okay. I think as a player, it's when you've had the chance to really react with an NPC, and you've been able to get out of them essentially their part in the scenario. You've managed. You might feel that you've had a success because you've uncovered a clue, or you've bonded with them and you've twisted them into giving you some information of some such. So I think that memory of kind of going away with that interaction doesn't have to be pleasant. Can be an adversarial relationship, which is often more fun. Or it could be like, oh, I saved them. I actually saved that person. That's the thing I'm going to remember. That could be quite cool. As a keeper, coming away from the game, and I've got to be careful with this because I know I get carried away playing NPCs. Sometimes it's just like it's like a free acting gig, which I know is completely against some people's way of playing games. But I have one game in mind where I was like, I need to be quiet now because I need to let the players actually play a game.
Remember that, yeah.
Yeah. That's all our games. But yeah, just I think. I don't know. I think the fun of an NPC, whether it be an adversary, whether it be, a colleague or someone you need to help or someone who can help you, impact. I think the memorability is the key.
Awesome. John?
For me, it's motivation, like understanding the motivation, and this is more from a writer's perspective of really getting my the memorability of it. It has to do with how relatable is this character, even if they're completely alien, and trying to get that sense of who they are, what they do, what drives them. Like creating a villain NPC who is completely inept, and yet the motivations for what they're doing and why they're doing it are there. They're not just mustache twirling villain. If they're a villain, or if it's a case of they're someone that you're supposed to like or is supposed to be helpful. Knowing what their motivation is and why they're doing what they're doing on the way in really, I think, helps engage the players.
Yeah. Hedge?
Going to be wonderfully controversial. Just start where I mean to continue and say that I don't like my NPCs to be too complicated. I think to sort of like bounce off what Newman was saying, if the NPCs have more than a name and a couple of facts about them, you as the keeper have an awful lot of things to remember, and you're already dealing with an awful lot of complicated things. And also you need to deal with caricatures sometimes. So I tend to think that there is something about this NPC that is important. I normally like to have a physical distinguisher. So one of my favorite characters ever had 2 long braids that she used to tuck sometimes. And it's like, that was a very memorable thing about her. And then what they want to do, their motivation, why they exist, what their point is. I think it stands slightly in contrast to literature, where you can develop very, very complicated characters. As a keeper, the only way to develop a complicated NPC is to have them be around for an awful long time. When they exist and start, they really should be very little. They should be a caricature that you can build from and have fun with. But yeah, give them a reason to exist and a physical marker of some kind.
Great. Scott?
I've been playing and running RPGs for almost 45 years at this stage, and I haven't got a clue what makes people connect to NPCs, because it's completely random. It depends on the group, it depends on the individuals. There is some X factor which I've never been able to pin down. You can come up with the most meticulously planned NPC and you think, this has got all sorts of hooks and the players are really going to buy into this character, and they'll bounce off it. And then you describe some sniveling little goblin in the background and he is suddenly their favorite NPC. And they will do anything for him. They will die for him. He doesn't even have a name, but they are obsessed with him. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I've had some experiences where sometimes someone at the table just gets excited about an NPC, and then the energy at the whole table is like, oh yeah, we are obsessed with him now. And so it can kind of snowball and change into something. That's awesome.
Yeah, there's a trope about that. About you walk into a bar and there's a wizard with all kinds of things around them. And, is there anybody else in the bar? Well, there's Snibbles the Goblin that's just made up on the spot. We want to talk about that one.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
What's their name?
John.
What's their surname? They don't have one. They don't have a surname.
Why?
Well, we need to question them. Yeah, what's their backstory?
That's awesome. So focusing just on NPCs for a minute, and then we'll go to monsters. When you, as a writer, when you go to sit down to create an NPC, is there a specific element that you really focus on first or most, either one, that you're trying to create to make them engaging? And let's go backwards this time. So starting with Scott.
Well, I guess they do have to serve a purpose. If it's a scenario that I'm developing and writing, I'll think about why that NPC is there and make sure that they're written in such a way that they fulfill that. So it could be that they're an antagonist, it could be that they're an information dispenser, it could be there to bail the PCs out if they get into real trouble. The only thing I'll be careful of, particularly with those last 2 categories, is that they're not too helpful. Because the last thing you want is an NPC to come in and just solve all the problems for the player characters and to be too useful. So yeah, having an NPC who is of limited use, or or even better, irritating enough that even if they are useful, the player characters don't want to spend too much time with them, then yeah, that's a sweet spot.
Hedge, go ahead.
I really like that idea of starting with them being useful. What are they for? Why do they exist? One of my favorite ways of dreaming up NPCs is I take an element of someone I know that I think is fascinating. So I pull out a version of a friend or someone I've worked with, and I just build around them. So I pretend it helps me get into the mindset. It helps me make them more than just a stick figure caricature. So that's how I take a physical marker of them in some way, and I then just say, oh, they're like, my friend Newman. And then I imagine then I suddenly know that they have a tie. I suddenly know that they're incredibly strong. I had all these facts about them.
Oh.
That's not emotionally strong. That's just physically. Emotionally, I'm incredibly weak.
Exactly. Now I have a cool, interesting NPC that will begin to cry when you make fun of his tie.
That's amazing. John, go ahead.
I sort of further only to just add to what has already been said. Sometimes it's a case of if say for example if your scenario has a location, like for example a warehouse, and who are they going to be talking to? Are they going to be talking to the general workers outside, or is it a specific individual inside that? And if that's the case, well, what is their role within that? And that the location builds their character. I mean, sometimes, but I think part of that is dependent upon the development of the scenario. But this is just one particular example where a location can then create the character for it.
Mm-hmm. Yep, Newman.
So I suppose, these guys have said some wonderful things. I really like the idea of having, but perhaps because I know it helps me, excuse me, sorry. I really like the idea of having like a physical trait for the character that I can hook back into when I'm kind of going, oh yeah, it's this character. So whether that be a positive, whether it be a negative, whether it just be a descriptor, and it doesn't have to be the villain has got a negative, physical description. It could just be for any particular reason, because we're all, different, completely uniquely different human beings. But I like having something where I can go, aha, that's the chap with the trimmed grey beard and the wonderful long hair. And I can kind of pin down who that character is when I come back to them. But
you often have a tick, don't you? Like a vocal, is it like a tick or a thing that you do with them?
So that really helps me when I'm playing, actually, as a keeper. Thanks, Hedge. You're absolutely right. When I'm playing them, that helps me having, I often prepare like not necessarily a voice, but something that I know that I can differentiate as the keeper, which then I think helps differentiate for my players. But I know not everybody does that, and you don't need to do that at all. It's just my personal fun time with that. But I think looking at the character's motivation, that's got to so that the players can pick up what they need to from an NPC, whether it's a masked motivation or whether it's just blatantly clear. Knowing what that NPC's motivation is probably going to dictate quite a lot about the NPC for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as keepers, we have a lot to manage at the table and remember and keep in our head. So it is, I think, really beneficial to have that motivation at the forefront, and then take your short notes as reminders of like, this is the person with the braids and this is their motivation. So like at the bare minimum, you have that and you can improv off of that. So awesome. That was really great. Let's move.
Can I just add something to what Newman said as well, which is, having voices for characters is really good, both for the players to identify the character and for you as the keeper to get into that character's mindset. But if like me, you're absolutely terrible at doing accents and impressions and stuff like that and don't even try, another trick you can do, which is one that I do the whole time, is just body language and posture. That change the way you sit or stand or the way you angle your head or something like that, just for particular characters. And that becomes like a shorthand to the players that, yes, this is you speaking in character as that character. And it helps, it certainly helps me as a GM get into that character's mindset just because I'm suddenly them.
Absolutely, yeah. That's great. So let's then talk a little bit about monsters, which I think can sometimes be a little bit more difficult. So from a perspective of when you sit down to write, the same question here is, what element are you focusing on first or most to make monsters engaging? And we'll start with Newman.
Monsters specifically, make them engaging. Okay. I think realistically for me, they've got to be resplendent. They've got to be wrapped up and completely entwined with the theme, the atmosphere, the tone of what the scenario has been. I've played scenarios and they've been really, really good. And I'm very, very forgiving because sometimes I just love a little bit of writing or a little thing. Oh, look at that dice. But I think
Alpaca.
sometimes you can play things. Oh, an alpaca. Sometimes you can play things, but then all of a sudden, the mythos monster, creature, whatever comes in, and it's kind of maybe a bit jarring or doesn't fit the vibe. You might have been doing a mystery, and then all of a sudden it's just bang, monster. I'm not going to be a hypocrite here. I've been guilty of that myself, I think, in the past as well. But when you're a new writer to this, years and years ago, you kind of go, and here's the bit where they find the monster. So for me, designing a monster, it's got to be foreshadows. It's got to be intrinsically linked to the investigation. I suppose, and you can't do this with all of them, but you want each individual investigator to kind of have their own approach, view, attack. They could decide to do things together. They could decide to solve or read the tome or whatever it is together. But I think to have each individual investigator have the opportunity to approach the monster or creature with their own particular view or thought, to have the opportunity is massive, because otherwise it might be that there's a scenario written and it's actually investigator number one is the one that has the ability to stop the monster. And it's just like, well, no, we need a monster that comes in and anybody from any particular angle can try all these different things to thwart the plans of this creature or monster.
Mm-hmm. John?
I think one of the things when deciding what I've been finding when I've created the monsters that I have is like, and Leslie knows this, the stats are absolutely the very, 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 very last thing that happened, because the whole idea is what is the monster to the story? What is it in relation to it? And sometimes like Newman, in terms of how to introduce the monster well, and sometimes like there does come in a case where like bang, and then there's a monster. In some cases it works if the scenario lends itself well to it. But the idea is that what is it that is about this particular creature, this monster, and why is it present in this in the story? One of the things that I found, I don't know if for those of you who've been doing this a long time, but of course when the Dungeons and Dragons original monster manual was there, I can't, like, how many of your groups actually had that book memorized? And so when you presented a monster, they knew the stats right there. And one of the things that I've enjoyed about Call of Cthulhu is that none of the monsters that I have actually come out of the book. There's something that is just unique to the story, using some guidelines, of course. But the idea is that what I want people to do when it comes to the monsters they encounter, I don't want them to list off the stats of it. I want them to go, what the hell is that? And genuinely experience that kind of rush, that they don't know how to deal with it, and being able to do that. And then anyway, I'll kind of let this go, because there's another sort of tangent on this about the genesis of what creates a monster. What's the seed of the idea around it? But I'll let that go for now.
Okay, I'll come back to that one. Go ahead, Hedge.
I'm going to get slightly angry because I have a pet peeve about monsters, which is that we are playing cosmic horror. Their motivations should be, if not unknowable, at least sort of intangible and out there. When we play and you're reading, especially sort of new writer scenarios, they often have a very, very clear goal that the monster is working to, that it feels very mundane and very noble. It's a lot more fun if it doesn't make sense, if you leave space within what you're doing for their motivations and why they do things. You can give general descriptions about what they are trying to do, but the more space you leave, the more interesting it is, and the more fascinatingly horrifying you can make it. So for me, the most interesting and best monsters are those who you give guidance into what sort of things they'll do, but you leave so much space for them to be just so unhuman. The more unhuman they can be, the more interesting they are.
Mm-hmm. Scott?
Yeah, kind of building on that. I think certainly the monsters that I've been happiest with when I've put them in scenarios are ones where there are interesting ways that the characters can interact with them that aren't combat. Because in the end, fighting monsters is probably the least interesting thing you can do with them. Having monsters that do sinister things, behave weirdly, have unsettling conversations with you. Those are the ones that will stick with you. The ones that you just shoot in the face, assuming they have a face, yeah, not so much.
Yeah. So John, let's go kind of the route you were going with, the seed of an idea for a monster. How do you get that idea? And then in that as well, if you try to tie that to the theme of your scenario, like how does that work? Do you always try to do that? What does that look like for the creation of monsters?
Yeah, I mean, like further to what Hedge and Scott were saying in terms of these are cosmic horror. If there is any sort of motivation to be considered inside it comes from, there may be a human angle in relation to the monster, but not with the monster itself. But anyway, I remember for the creation of the monster in the first scenario that I released, it came out of a conversation. I was playing with something about Evil Dead Sea Scrolls, and not intending to actually create a monster for that particular introduction, but it kind of ended up, and it was a friend of mine who's a writer, and he used a quote from Wes Craven, that humans and books are the same. You open them up and they're both red. And that created an image in my head of this horrific transformation into like where you have a human transforming into something else, the whole body horror thing. And so whatever human motivations kind of just erase at that point. So that's one idea. The other one was the case of where honestly the monster is nothing more than a caged animal, but it's an alien. Like it's completely and so whatever motivations are there, it's just what it happens to feed on. And so those kinds of creation, and then the oddly enough, like the actual appearance of the monster, that comes later. Like what does it do? And then starting to create that appearance. And I will fully admit that my base descriptions kind of start, and then I hand it over to an artist, and they do wonders with it. And sometimes what they come up with in terms of the artwork, then I come back and add a bit more because of what the artist did.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, I mean, clearly that's happened with all of anything that I've done so far, where I've actually had to come back and because of what the artwork was. But yeah, I mean, the idea is to make something that is completely alien, those genesis of ideas. But specifically, I remember that Wes Craven quote my friend Michael created. It stuck with me. And and that sort of becomes that kind of motivation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about you, Newman, in terms of like, where do you get your ideas for monsters?
Well, firstly, the next thing I start my meeting with on Monday morning is going to be a story about humans and books. Just a quick opening quote, just to see how the table reacts, I think. Where do I get ideas? Do you know, it's song lyrics. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, you know, being so, I'm very lucky. In my other life, I'm head of a couple of departments in a school. I'm head of drama, head of media. So I have a very creative 9 to 5. And honestly, on a regular basis, there are things that are said going around. You know, we're studying practitioners. You know, Stanislavski, Brecht. You know, and then moving over to media, and we're looking about the impact of things on mass communication. So there's so much going on quite a lot of the time creatively. Very, very lucky in that respect. But yeah, I think, I don't know, listening to John then, I was thinking about the scenarios that I've written and I've published. And I was actually thinking, in one of my scenarios, it's a Christmas scenario. The monster is Krampus. So I kind of reinterpreted as opposed to invented. It wasn't my monster. It was well, here's something that's fun for a Christmas scenario that hopefully some people can have some fun with. Obviously with a mythos spin on the whole thing. And I kind of got to play with that. But again, even with that monster, I think my monsters are more about the influence, or this is where it comes down to. It's the personality of it, because as Hedge said, they are cosmic beings. It's not their personality. It's more about the effect that they have, the personality that has, the impact that has on NPCs, the impact that has on players, the impact that has on the environment. I think that's where it comes from. And those ideas, they're born out of what are the investigators going to experience when they see someone and their eyes turn black, or they see someone, their spine snaps backwards and they're crawling down the stairs on their hands, exorcist styley. What's the impact going to be? So I think it's more about the ripple effect of the entity's personality is probably where I go. But I think Hedge is right. I do very much get influenced by what I'm reading or what I'm listening to, or et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Scott, do you have anything to add about your inspiration, where you get ideas from?
Yeah, I guess when I'm writing a scenario, I very rarely think of the monster or monsters ahead of time. That I'll come up with a situation. I'll generally start with an instigating scene or an idea or a problem that is getting thrown at the players they've got to resolve. And the monsters are fundamentally just tools to make that happen. They're I was about to say personifications, but they're not really people, but they're embodiments of the themes of the scenario and the kinds of problems that the PCs find themselves faced with. Sometimes it's fun just to take some of the classic monsters out for a ride as well, and I've certainly done that. But mostly I'll just start off with a more general idea, and the monsters will just make themselves known to me.
Yeah. What about you, Hedge?
The further I can get from the concept of a classic monster, the happier I am generally. So I really love it when the monster is the entire house. I really love it when the monster is the entire planet. I really love it when the monster is capitalism. I really love it when you can't really untangle it. These kind of bigger, broader strokes. So the ones that are most memorable for me are the moments when maybe they're playing and they're going, oh, I think maybe we can find the big bad, and then just the sheer scale fathom is just mind-boggling. Like, you just cannot even deal with what you're facing right now. It is too hard. My friend Pete wrote a scenario called Flesh Wounds, and as you go through it, you kind of realize that at some point, the end of absolutely everything is inevitable is a key aspect of like how that plays out. And I love that concept within a scenario. And I mean, classic monsters are fun. Yeah, 1920s investigators, boom, boom, boom. Yeah, sure. I'm over that. I want my monsters to be mind-bogglingly huge. And and the moment when investigators realize it, I live for those like...
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, so before we move off creating monsters, whoever's most excited to answer this question, I think it only needs one person because I think the process is generally the same, but it's important to talk about, which is actually creating monster stats. What is the process that you go through for assigning the numbers to your monster? Is anyone particularly excited to answer this question?
I usually ask Stu Sellens. I go, I've got some stats here, Stu. What should they actually be? And then he'll come back with it. And I'll go, wicked. Can we do this? And he goes, yeah, but they should be this. And I go, oh, well, actually, we'll just keep them the same then. Sorry.
And admittedly for me, actually, my source for stats was actually Leslie.
Does anyone actually enjoy statting monsters? I leave it to the last moment. I mean, when I'm writing stuff for publication, that's the last bit that goes in before it heads off.
Go ahead, Hedge.
Really know what you can do is you can get your copy of the Keeper's Handbook, and you can go to where they have statted lots of gods. Yeah. You can find a god that's kind of similar to yours, and then you just change the numbers a little bit. That is, in effect, how to do it. And so when Scott did do that back in the day, and he fixed all those things the first time, we can just all copy up his work.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Honestly, my go-to monster collectively of anything that I've done is a Terror from Beyond, and I just reskin it and modify it.
Perfect. So we have a couple questions I want to sneak in here, and also if anyone has questions as we continue, you can feel free to put those in the chat, and we'll make sure to get to those at the end if I'm not going to get them as I go. But on the topic of monsters, if a question from Alex, if the monsters are unfathomable, does that mean that even their followers and cultists don't understand them? And if so, what effect does that have on investigation? And then a follow-up to that was also, if the cultists think they understand, are they usually correct? Go ahead, Newman. Yeah. You're on this.
Yeah. I think it's Alex's question. I just want to jump in because it's Alex. Hi, Alex. I think that's a brilliant question. I love the idea, and Alex has kind of already suggested it in the question. The followers might think they understand. They're like, I completely understand this cosmic deity's influence on me. They haven't got a bloody clue. Their mind is shattered. They are a shell of an individual. So, well, potentially, this could be a way to go with it. But their fundamental cult-like belief, it's in the it's in the name of the the Kool-Aid they're drinking. They are a cult. They are a gathering of people that fully invest in this for whatever number of reasons. So I think that having those broken characters who fundamentally believe at their core that sacrificing Hedge is the thing that's going to save the world, when actually they are servants of whoever, I think that's fantastic that the cultist has that belief, but the investigators can see it's a crock of not very nice stuff. They can see that, they can see that that's not the case. But again, that's a good NPC to perhaps interact with, good clues to get that don't help you, but also tell you they're a dead end because they're cultists and they're not going to talk to you.
But the fact that it's a mythos cult, and the fact that it's rooted in cosmic horrors, I mean that's kind of the least worst part of it, all of it. Because if you think, I'm sorry, this is probably going to be a terrible thing to say, but if you think about most real world religions, they're absolutely terrible in the same respect, because you have holy texts that have been around for thousands of years. No two people can agree on what they mean, and everyone's willing to kill each other over it. And that's stuff that's supposed to be very good and wholesome and very human. I mean, adding cosmic horrors to that dynamic isn't going to make it any worse.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on that one before we move on?
Scott, as a clergy person, I fully agree.
I was going to say John's probably the most qualified to talk about this right now.
But I mean, you know, one of the things in that is that in terms of it's how utterly clueless the followers are, and the other thing is irrelevant, especially in cosmic horror, is that the presence of and so, but you can deal with the cultists because what they're doing may be objectively bad, and you might be able to thwart what they're doing, but their relationship to whatever it is that they're trying to do is irrelevant. Because, you know, if they're trying to curry favor with you know, some eldritch god, the eldritch god doesn't care.
Mhm.
You know, and sort of like a motivation of trying to bring them, no, they don't, like I can't even say it's don't care, like it's trying, you know, it's like one of a fruit fly that's out of your garbage that's trying to summon you to give them more food. You know, sort of thing. I mean, you might happen to throw stuff into their area, but that's what we are relative to these to the universe at large, that irrelevance in terms of cosmic horror. I mean, I think that's one of the things. Like, spiritual horror doesn't do a thing for me. Cosmic horror does, for that reason alone.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about maybe during play. So let's pivot when you're at the table and you're a keeper. What are some in the moment keeper techniques that you use to make NPCs and monsters come alive? So let's assume we're running a pre-made scenario. You have the NPC and the monster stats and descriptions. What are some of your techniques to do that? We'll start with Scott.
Ooh. One technique I use fairly regularly is to make monsters, and particularly NPCs, fallible, because I think there's something quite engaging about perhaps encountering some monster that that's part of a sinister conspiracy, and you realize that the fate of humanity might be on the line, and you meet it, and you learn its motivations, you talk to it a bit, and you realize it's an idiot. And I've done that a few times, and that I think there's a couple of things that happens at that point where you both think, oh yeah, there's a release of tension, haha, it's funny, this thing's an idiot, but it's also, we're getting destroyed by idiots, which I think is a fun dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very much. Okay, go ahead, Hedge.
Kind of build on that idea of idiot, because I'd really like it, and to build on what John was saying earlier about the cults and the reason people join them. Like, if you are going to be having an awful lot of interactions with antagonists, there's a few things you can do. One is make them, kind of give them a motivation in your head that's sort of a bit benign, like this cult has joined up to get laid. That's probably, yeah, it's pretty normal. And that's kind of fun because you can make them annoying and upsetting and unpleasant in various different ways, and it can bounce off. But the one that I was actually thinking about was a lot of investigators are really self-centered and piss off the NPCs and are unpleasant to them. And it kind of happens a lot where suddenly they burst into violence for no reason and threaten people and do things that regular humans would never do. I really like it when my NPCs then react to that. Yeah. So, and maybe they don't react to the moment because they're a little bit scared of reacting, but then it has consequences down the. I love it when the thing that happened has consequences that I can point back to. That, oh, they're reacting like this because of that roll you made 5 minutes ago, and they're like, oh, because they feel real then. I once had a series of great rolls one of my players made where he basically blackmailed one of the NPCs into giving loads and loads of information. Later on in the scenario, that NPC kidnapped him and tried to get rid of him because of all of the blackmail. And that was such a fun way to play the game. He knew why it happened. It all made sense. And it was this lovely back and forth. Those moments when the motivations are really, really clear and affect the game, I really enjoy.
Yeah. What about you, John? What techniques kind of do you use to help NPCs and monsters come alive during play?
Well, I'm going to shift gears a little bit from both Scott and John. And sometimes it's a case of, particularly when a monster itself appears, that becomes then trying to evoke the narrative, the atmosphere. Sometimes I use vocal sound effects. Like the sound, like if there's like the typical, for example, the spider walk of either bones, like bone snapping, of actually mimicking that, and doing that kind of thing, or just something kind of flying out, like using those kinds of gestures. Although admittedly, I'm favoring, the reason I'm pointing this direction is because John's here and Scott's there, in my perspective. So pardon my pointing. But it's just that engagement point of, and because at that point, like sometimes of just bringing things down low. I mean, I remember one of my favorite stock scenarios has always been the Cracked and Crooked Mance, and when the reveal happens, because sometimes it comes down low and they're expecting something, and then something else shows up. And then they just kind of back away from the table, like, just because of whatever it is that you do. You know you've got it.
Yeah, absolutely. Newman, what about you?
Treading familiar territory on what these guys are saying. I think I like what John was saying there about that moment. I think relationships obviously are hugely important, for good, for bad, with the NPCs. You know, it's all about forming relationships, and even though it might be a 2-minute conversation, there was a vibe, there was a relationship, there was an investment from the players that the keeper hopefully has presented there in some kind of way, so that the players can link back to it. But I suppose, like, because of the mystery element, I feel, and I love the mystery side of Call of Cthulhu, because of that mystery element, or the investigative element, should I say. We all know those brilliant kind of murder mysteries, or whatever they are, when you work out the thing when you're supposed to work it out. Now, obviously, with players, investigators, they're a whole curveball to that. But when those moments land and you get that really lovely moment with an NPC, and you can go, oh, I didn't know that John was actually X, Y, and Z. You know, that's a really lovely moment to land. So those techniques to do that are great. Or even if they don't happen, those moments where, you know, the investigators have got a good or bad relationship with an NPC for whatever reason, but then they see something that's true to the NPC, but just jars a little bit. And it allows them, it gives them a little bit of something to go, wait a minute. And I love those moments. And then you let the player then work out what they want to do. It might well be that they all just go, no, look, there's a goblin with no surname over there, let's go and talk to him. Or it might be that they go, why is he doing that, or why is she wearing that when she's giving those little hooks, those other little things to allow the investigators to, I suppose, investigate.
Yeah. Okay, so we had a question, so anyone can answer this one. This is from Alex. How do you handle a large crowd of NPCs, especially when the players want to talk to everyone? So, for example, you're in a nightclub with 50 plus people and they want to talk to everyone.
Don't be afraid.
Oh, sorry. Go on, Scott.
I need to grab something. I'll throw it back.
Okay.
I'm just going to say, don't be afraid to summarize. You don't have to role play the encounters. Just say, right, you speak to the 50 NPCs, this is what you learn. Unless one of them's important and you want to play out the interaction, that's a 2-second scene.
My big second scenario that I wrote and published, I decided it would be ace to make it a big Christmas black tie dinner party where there are a lot of NPCs. I think the mechanics that I tried to do as a writer for that were more along the lines of, here are the pieces of information, depending on who they speak to. They can pick these things up in different places and from different people. It's not tied directly to an individual. But also knowing essentially what I wanted to do with that was, here's a load of NPCs. You feel like you've got the freedom to go and explore this party with all of these people and go and have that experience. But the way it's written is that, or depending on how the keeper runs it, but after a few of those interactions where they've made some personal connections, that's when things happen. There's an inciting incident, which then, takes it up a notch and removes the ability to go, but I wanted to talk to all 50 NPCs one by one. And there's a goblin over there with their surname. It was, there's an incident that happens and it stops that essentially from happening.
The only other thing that I would add to that, and I think especially with what Newman said, is to basically say like there's not enough game time for us to be able to do it, but you can't sort of say that. But in a pinch, you can do like a couple things like a keeper deck or something like that, just to pull that out if you don't have that prepared. Because as from a writer's perspective, it just is silly to write out the name of every single attendee in the party. As tempting as it is for to almost over explain it or over detail, that's obviously not going to happen. So having tools like this, and even you might even reference it, but at the same time, internally there's a ticking clock of wanting to make that action, that to draw their attention back to that. To the relevant, if there are like a large group of 50 people, but only 8 are actually relevant to what they're doing, is to draw their attention back to those core people.
One of my favorite games is Vassin, which is a free league game, and they have a really interesting way of dealing with these complicated scenes with lots of moving parts, which they tell you to give each of your player characters one action to take within the space, and to give them one role based on the space, and to give them something. So if they say the scene is going to be us talking to 50 NPCs and asking them all questions, I say, okay, well, what specific action are each of you going to take? How are you going to do this? Are you going to try and overhear something and give each of them a chance to get one piece of information from this entire encounter? And that is the information they gather, and then the scene finishes. So you think about it as a scene rather than trying to play by play everything they do. That's how I like to resolve those big complicated scenes that are too much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, really great advice there. So as we're wrapping up here, what I would like to do is go around and have everyone maybe say a little bit of encouragement or advice for someone who may be hesitant to make a monster, create a new monster themselves, or unsure of how they're going to go through the process. And then after you do that, go ahead and tell us where we can find you on social media or wherever else you like to connect with everyone. So we'll start with Newman.
My advice would be, go to local charity shop, find a really old dusty book, start reading a couple of pages, summon something. Experience it firsthand, let it loose in some kind of school or swimming pool or shopping mall, and just really look at the reactions of the people around you. There's nothing that can be substituted for firsthand real life experience. You can find me in all those dark corners. I'm TA Newman. Look it up on the interwebs or the socials. I'll find you there. Always happy to chat. MR Discord, MP Discord, and occasionally I'm the person flashing a light in your back window.
Amazing. John, go ahead.
I at this point, it's just some of it is reading, some of it is just encountering that, but at the same time, like if you need inspiration, fine, go read read up on the various bestiary. But when it comes to creating the monster, what best serves the story that you're trying to do? So it's not a case of, I want to write a story about, and you just yank something out of the keeper's handbook, because like start with the story. What is it that you want to do? And then the monster will emerge. You will summon the monster in the writing. Just to go further with what Newman said, although maybe not quite as catastrophic. And you can get a hold of me usually through Discord. I'm on the Miskatonic repository. I'm on the Miskatonic Playhouse just as a my nickname is John/Agatheron, which is and get a hold of me that way. I'm also on the Facebook. I'm also on the Facebook page. So you can direct message me anywhere with that. And yeah.
Awesome. Hedge?
It's, if someone's asking me for advice on how to write a monster, how to write an NPC, just do it, and the first one will be rubbish, and then the second one will be less rubbish. It's the same as pretty much any aspect of this trade. Your first scenario is going to be a bit crap. Make it short, get it done, get it out there into the real world, get some feedback. The next one will be better. Use tropes, rip off other ideas, do your own version of someone else's monster.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to kind of be a bit bad and a bit derivative. That's how you start. Later, you can do good stuff, but the first one's going to be crap anyway. You're going to make all the same mistakes that everyone else has made. Don't worry. I just make something, and once it's out there in the world, you'll find out if it's any good. Do that a few dozen times, and maybe you'll start being a bit creative. Don't worry. Just go for it. Create stuff. It's fine. Like, people worry about being bad. Don't worry. There's plenty of terrible people out there, and they're publishing. Trust me, I've read some of their scenarios. You can find me pretty much anywhere as John Hedge. I spend a lot of time on Blue Sky, spend a lot of time on Discord. Just hit me up if you want to chat for any reason. And I am about to run a backer kit Kickstarter fundraiser for my print edition of Embers of Humanity. So if anyone is interested in post-apocalyptic role-playing, come hit me up and I'll tell you all about it.
Awesome. Scott?
Yeah, just to reiterate what Hedge was saying there, I think for a start, worrying about whether what you're doing is good is a good sign. The worst writers I've ever met are the most confident. So if you're agonizing over it, that's probably a sign that you're onto the right track. And yeah, also reiterating what John said, don't be afraid to steal. If you're stuck for an idea for an NPC or a monster, nick something from a film you've watched or a book you've read, because by the time you've reinterpreted it and put it in the context of your scenario and described it in your own way, it's going to become its own thing anyway. So, yeah, I mean, filing the serial numbers off something changes it in a big way. So, yeah, go for that. And yeah, if people want to find me, I am on Blue Sky at S. Dorwood. I can be found on the Good Friends of Jackson Elias Discord server, or check out blasphemoustomes.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much to panelists. I'm XP Lovecat. You can find me on my YouTube channel. And I hope everyone has an amazing rest of the con. Thank you.